I'm going to pass it off to our event discussion leaders to introduce themselves. So Rick, why don't you start?
I'm Rick Bryant from the Central Pennsylvania Festival of the Arts in State College, Pennsylvania. In 2021, it's the second weekend in July, 2021. 4 days.
Annik, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Annik Dupaty, Director of Events and Volunteers with Madison Museum of Contemporary Art in Madison, Wisconsin. And I oversee the Art Fair on the Square and the Amoka Art and Gift Fair. And our 2021 event will also be the second full weekend in July.
Sharon, do you want to introduce yourself in the meantime?
Sure. I'm Sharon McAllister. I'm the director of ArtFest Fort Myers in Fort Myers, Florida. We were very, very lucky. Do not kill us. Our event is the first weekend in February. So we sailed right through that with no knowledge of what was coming for all of you, for whom we feel so sorry. And we are hopeful that we will happen in February of 2021 and are planning a virtual show to go with that.
So we're just going to jump right into our first section, which is going to focus on how did you approach transitioning to a virtual event? And for Sharon, how did you consider starting a virtual event to go along with your in-person event in February? So the first question I have for you guys is how many months did you have to prepare for this transition? And when did you know your physical event would be canceled or that you would add a virtual event to that?
This year, I believe that we canceled our event on April 16th. And our virtual event opened on July 7th, I believe. So when we canceled our live event, we didn't really give it much thought to not having something. So we just decided to jump into a virtual event with both feet. So, believe me, it took every day from the 17th of April through the beginning of July.
Annik, how about you?
Sure. So pretty much as soon as the museum was closed, I started thinking about alternatives for our event. We didn't actually cancel until the week of May 8th. So we had a good 2 months to plan. But like Rick, we really used every minute of every day.
So like I said, we happened in February, so we didn't have that now, and we watched much of what started coming up from those of you who had such a small amount of time to do that. But we started researching virtual event maybe 2.5, 3 months ago, 2 months ago when platforms started coming out, and spent a tremendous amount of time doing that, and have since decided on our platform and are in the process of getting ready to start its preparation, and feel very fortunate to have from now until February to get that done.
For your virtual events, did any of you guys collect feedback from your artists either before or after your transition? If so, how? And for the ones that opted out, do you have any reasons for them as to why they would have opted out?
We collected feedback. We did a post-event survey. So to ask about their sales and their experience and so on, but they do it again, that kind of thing. So. And about half of the people participated in the survey.
That's great. Were they sort of leaning more towards, yeah, they would participate again, or?
Yes, they would participate again. So, and our virtual event had a booth fee. We charged $25. Not close to our real booth fee, but we figured if they had just a little tiny bit of skin in the game, people would treat it more seriously. And people felt that the $25 booth fee was about right, which I'm not sure I should be proud of, but it was.
Did anybody else collect feedback from your artists either before or after?
Yeah, so we did both. Actually, back in March, I put together an advisory panel of artists that represented a range of, disciplines from around the country to help just guide some of our thinking and give us feedback on some of the thoughts we were having about the fair, whether to cancel, reschedule, hold virtually, all those sorts of things. And then we also did a post-event survey that I can talk more about when we get into some of the successes.
Yeah.
And in our process of deciding what we were doing for a virtual event, we talked to lots and lots of artists up front ones that we knew would talk to us openly and not be concerned about what they said to us. So we did that, and now we are in the process of running this week. We're running demos for what our platform looks like. We had one today, one yesterday, and we have one tomorrow. And those are going great. The artists are in love with what that platform looks like.
Great. So that creates a pretty smooth transition into, you know, what tools and services or platforms in this case are you using or exploring for your virtual event? So Sharon, since you kind of mentioned it, do you want to start off with that question?
Sure. We're using Eventany. We also looked at Booth Central and Event Hub and Pathable and VFairs and did demos with all of them. But we are pretty opinionated about the fact that Eventany is the only choice. For several reasons that we can talk about if you want, but that's who we're on, and it's just a great place.
Sharon, I actually would love to know what were some of the main reasons you decided to go with them.
The two big reasons, there were lots of reasons about their interface and features and all that, but the two big ones are that Eventany has an integrated shopping cart, so that the artists can purchase, the attendees can purchase through one shopping cart rather than having to click out to the artist websites. And we thought that was really important, because you don't want people leaving a main site. I mean, it's a general rule for websites. Unfortunately, all artist websites are not created equal, right? You all know that, right? We did quite a survey on that. It's rather shocking. And if attendees have to go to different websites, they go down a rabbit hole, don't come back. Plus, they have to figure out how the shopping cart is set up on that artist's site or not, right? Have all that problem. So we thought it was really important to have integrated shopping. So the integrated shopping works just like Amazon, right? You go on, whether you like Amazon or not, they set the bar on this online shopping. So you go on, you pick everything you want, you put it in one cart, you pay one time. And then by magic, the orders go to the artists and the money goes to the artists and the fees and all that sales tax and all that stuff happens in the background. So that was one reason. The other really important reason was that once the artists built their store or booth or whatever you want to call it on one festival, if they're participating in another festival that is on Eventany's platform, their store rolls over automatically. Which for the artist, can you imagine? And so the example I use, and we use the artist demos, is I say, for those of you who were here back when ZAPP started and everybody was kicking and screaming about all the problems of doing digital, God forbid, right? Can you imagine if you had to maintain 5 or 6 or 10 or something different ZAPP profile, different companies, right? And what a pain that would be for artists. So so we thought that was a really important feature for them. So, and there's a bunch of other reasons, but those are the biggies.
Thank you for sharing that. That's actually really interesting, and I think super useful for artists if you spend the time that it takes setting up your, your shop or whatever it is one time, but you can roll that over. Yeah, it may be a lot of work in the beginning, but overall it just becomes a lot more convenient. So that's great.
And it's a lot of work to drive around to festivals, right? And right now they're sitting at home, so they can start doing their shops now. Mm-hmm. We've done demos. I'd be happy to put in the chat where you can go look at them.
Thanks.
Yeah, that'd be great. Eileen, I think I can see you and you're not muted. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry about that, guys. What was the question? I had to turn it off and back on again.
Yeah. So the question we're talking about right now is what tools / services or platforms did you use or explore for your virtual event?
Okay, we had actually 3 different things. We had a plugin. Some of you may understand this better than I do. This is not my forte. The management was my part. The plugin was called Draw Attention, and it provided light boxes and 2D mapping on the static images.
That's cute.
We had an application called Publitas, And that's a third-party online reader, which allowed us to host as much content as we wanted in the form of catalogs. And the third thing we had was a virtual private server, which we used to boost our capacity to handle what we expected to be a huge volume of traffic.
And what costs were associated with holding all of those extra services and tools?
Not as much as you would think. The draw attention was a single payment of $74. Publitas is $99 per month, and we chose to extend it. It dawned on us actually after the event, during the event, that there was no reason really to shut down the website. And so what we've done is archived it on Salem Art Association's own website so that people can continue to access it and actually continue to buy off of it too. So Publitas was $99 a month, and so we had it for 2 months at the beginning, and we've continued it. And the VPS is $20 a month.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Annik or Rick, do either of you want to speak to this subject? Rick?
Oh, well, actually, we just used our regular website, which is built in WordPress. So, and we opened our virtual show to anybody who had been juried into our show who had an online sales platform already. So we were just going to keep it simple since we had so little time. We were just going to do that. There were 320 people who had been juried into our show, and we ended up with 157 in our virtual show. So we did ask the artists for 2 things that weren't on our regular website. We asked for a square photo of themselves, and we also asked for a short statement that was sort of like a greeting that they would have given to somebody walking into their booth. And we gave them examples that they could plagiarize that, said, I love coming to Penn State, blah, blah, blah. And we also suggested that they use a coupon code that was something like Penn State 2020 that would reference our show to help them track sales and do a little branding. So.
Great. Annik, do you want to speak to your the platform you use to host your virtual event?
Sure. So we actually also have a WordPress-based website, and we were already in past years using a gallery feature to highlight the artists that participate in our live fair. So we went ahead and used the WordPress along with Formidable for some submissions, and then we coupled that with using Facebook events. And that ended up working out really well. We gave every artist that was juried into the 2020 fair a free listing on our website, and then they had the option to upgrade and have an additional, what we called a booth tile for only $25, or we charged $25 for artists to have a dedicated Facebook post within the Facebook event.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So kind of going along with, how you worked this out for artists, how do you promote the virtual experience to patrons? And
we used every social media platform that we have. We do Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we kind of flooded the zone there, so to speak. And we actually reached out to sort of local influencers to have them use their social media platforms to do it. So we made a poster. We always have a poster, and we actually sold that. We usually give it away. And that was a huge promotional item for us because our poster is sort of collectible. But mostly we relied on social media.
Makes sense for virtual events, for sure. Yeah.
So we actually used a multimedia strategy in much the same way that we do with the live fair. So of course we did do a lot of social media posting on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, but then we also did paid ads as well as Instagram stories. And then we had sponsors of the event that were local media companies. So we did TV ads, radio, print ads in newspaper, magazine ads. We really tried to splash the virtual event just about everywhere we could. We also did a postcard mailing to our members, and we used some sandwich signs out on the street outside of the museum.
Eileen, do you want to speak to this one?
Yes, we also relied on social media. However, we only had 7 weeks to pull ours together, and so that had quite an impact on our marketing. We did the social media and boosted Facebook several times. In addition to that, we sent out to all of the Salem Art Association's business partners, and they spread the word too. We relied pretty heavily on word of mouth. The business partners were very, very helpful in spreading the word within Salem. We also asked the artists to participate in this too. And so we sent them a media package that allowed them to send out to their own mailing lists. And so that too amplified our voice. But we had some sponsors with the in-person art fair, and some of those transferred over. And so we were able to get a lot of attention from those business partners as well.
Great.
There's a question specifically for Annik that I just wanted to see real quick. The question is, Annik, which of the marketing strategies did you find most successful?
Sorry, being at home, like the challenges. We're getting like a call on our landline. I'm trying to tell someone else to pick it up. So of the marketing strategies we found most successful, I really do think it was the mix. But we did certainly a lot of posts within our Facebook, the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art's Facebook page, and then we have our own newsletter that we send out to subscribers by email, and I think we got a lot of traffic that way as well.
So Julia, so we have the advantage, right, that we're going into it far ahead. So our plan is that we will incorporate the promotion of the virtual event, because we're going to run it either way. I mean, it'll run concurrently with the in-person one. God forbid it runs on its own. That's not our goal. But so we will incorporate the virtual one, in everything we do in our big marketing mix of, like Annik said, all the types of media that she used. We're also going to ask our artists who end up in the virtual show. We want their list off their databases. We want their zip code list. I don't care about the people's names and all that stuff. If they send us the zip codes of their buyers, because then we can do a really good job of targeting the social media paid advertising if we have the zip codes. We can spread out the impact, because maybe somebody from Pennsylvania, who's normally in Florida in the winter and comes to ArtFest, isn't here, and wants, if we know that zip code, we can get into those zip codes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So kind of on like a sponsor level, I know, Annik, you mentioned your sponsors. Oh wait, or maybe Eileen mentioned her sponsors. What type of responses did you get from your existing and potential sponsors about the virtual event? And did you try and get any new sponsors for just the virtual event?
We tried to get new sponsors. I mean, we have a development director and she worked hard. So it was a heavy lift. And in the end, we had some local angels. And frankly, our biggest sponsor was the Payroll Protection Program.
Yeah. That EIDL loans.
I would second that. Yeah, that really saved us. But as far as our regular sponsors, many backed out because they couldn't have that face-to-face time with 200,000 people that they normally get to touch coming to our event, and many had their own challenges with the pandemic and lost some of their marketing budgets. We did pick up 3 sponsors. One was a video production company and 2 were construction companies. The 2 construction companies already had a relationship with the museum, and I would call them angels as well. And luckily, many of our normal media sponsors came back and supported the event, so that was great.
Eileen, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, we as I did say, we transferred over 3 sponsors from the in-person art fair, and again, because our time was so very, very tight, the turnaround, we didn't have the time to go out and get new sponsors, but we were able to talk to 2 other supporters of Salem Art Association, and they both agreed to come on board as well.
And we have found, again, since we're in a different timeline here, we have found that the fact that we are launching a virtual event has been essential to the renewal of our sponsors, because they're afraid, right? It's February, we're going to be too soon. We also have an alternate date a little bit later in the spring already reserved. But it's been essential to have the virtual component going forward to those sponsors. And so far we have renewed all of them. And we are in the process of starting to do some new ones that might be unique to virtual. Because I can really envision that there are some kinds of companies that maybe don't care about seeing the 200,000 people on site, right? Or R95, and then it's not the right kind of business. But the virtual might be a really good place for them because they're a different kind of company. So,
Sharon, thank you. You actually sort of answered one of the questions that I had for you, which was, I just was really curious to know what made your decision to host a virtual event also with the physical event. And it sounds like sponsorship could potentially be one of those reasons.
yeah, I mean, there was 2 driving reasons when we started, right? We watched all of you who had to cancel have to refund booth fees and sponsor fees. And that's not a sustainable model, right? I mean, unless your reserves are a whole lot bigger than ours, we can't sustain multiple years of doing that. I mean, right? So I'm assuming that you're in the same position. So we're not in the mood to do that. It's not sustainable. So we wanted to build a strong enough virtual platform that we're not going to do that. It's a package deal with us. Hopefully you'll be there in person. If not, we have a big, robust virtual site, and we hope to not be in the refund business. And so we're applying the same thing to our sponsors. So not only is Events in East site really robust for the artists, but actually a lot through work we're doing with them is going to be really robust for sponsors. So all of our on-site sponsors, particularly those that have named areas like our art yard and our kids area and that kind of thing, they have naming rights. They all have pages, 1 or multiple on the virtual page where they can have all kinds of virtual activities for kids and downloads. And we're just now building all that. So we have a lot of content to create, but because we really believe that the virtual one's got to be an experience and a happening. It can't just be a glorified online gallery. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to all of you, because I can't imagine what you had to do to get up what you did. It's unbelievable.
Great. So let's also just kind of take that into successes and learnings. And I believe we also got a question in the chat, so we can kind of start there is, either a learning or a success for your artists. Did they end up selling work through your virtual event?
About 65% of our artists ended up selling work. One sold over $10,000 worth of work, which is a great return on a $25 booth fee. So, and you know, others of the 65% that sold work, most of them sold enough to make it pay. So, you know, they did. You know, it's not sustainable. I mean, you know, but it was a good stopgap that we could put together quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we did a survey after the event, and artists reported that they sold on average 2.5 items, with some people selling dozens of, you know, works of art. The average sale was $317. I think the highest reported sale was 4,200, which I would say, you know, exactly what Rick said, for a $25 investment, that was a pretty great return, especially with things being so challenging right now. The other, you know, piece of feedback we received from one of the artists is they check their website traffic for all of the virtual events they're doing. And someone reported that their website traffic for our weekend was up 12 times their normal website traffic. So we're happy about that.
Yeah.
That's great. Eileen, do you want to talk next?
Yes, and we also did a Google survey at the end of the fair, and most of our artists were extremely pleased, and they all want to do it again. They had a lot of learning too, and a comment that we got quite frequently was that they would do it differently the next time. They would enhance their own website to be more in tuned with virtual rather than the in-person. And as far as sales, it was all over the board. We had some who didn't sell at all. And then we had about 4 artists out of the 126 who said that they had their best sales ever. So it was, you know, that it actually sounded very much like the regular in-person fair, frankly, as far as that. And our highest selling was over 3,000, and the lowest was, of course, 0. However, it was an interesting thing with the feedback from the artists. A lot of them, even though they didn't sell, were extremely happy to have had this to learn on, and they were definitely going to be taking it forward. Across the board, most of the people who did sell sold about 1/4 of what they would have sold as in an in-person fair. But again, you have to remember that we had only 7 weeks to make this happen.
Yeah.
And that did not allow us a lot of time to flood the market with marketing.
Yeah, makes total sense. Sharon, I know you're pre-virtual event, but what would you consider maybe some of your metrics for artist success when you go into your virtual event?
Oh, it'll turn out for them. It'll turn out being sales. I mean, that'll be the biggie, and then traffic and there's on the back end of Eventney. It's a company run all by engineers, so there is a huge amount of analytics built into it. So we'll be able to see things like average time per store, how many people bought from multiple artists. There's just all kinds of stuff. If you look at our demo, you'll see a lot of it now. And they can do that both by aggregate for the festival. They can do it by artist. So they can send it to the artist. The artist knows what's selling to them, how long people have been in those stores. So we'll measure on things like that. Totally aside from that, I want to paste a link in the chat. It's for the Indian market, which I don't know if everyone knows what that is. It's a huge event in Santa Fe. It's an indigenous people event. It's the Indian market. It's got 1,000 or something like that artists at it. It obviously canceled. They went virtual, and I think that their site, which is not built on Eventney, they custom did a site, very, very expensive site. You'll be able to see that when you go. But I think it is a really good example of what I would say is a all-in, full-blown experience online. It is really spectacular. So I'm going to put the link in the chat. When you get to their page, you just click on virtual at the top of the page.
Is this the Heard Museum's Indian market?
I don't know. Is that in Santa Fe?
No, actually, I think the one I'm talking about potentially is in Arizona.
Yeah, this is in Santa Fe. It's the largest of the Indian markets, but it's the site is spectacular. There's parts of it you can't get to unless you buy a ticket. The rest of it is in front of the paywall.
There is one question in the chat, and thank you, Sharon, for sharing that. I appreciate it, as I'm sure everyone else does. And this, you all may have alluded to this with your comments about the payroll protection program, but if your festival or your event is a fundraiser, how did you make money this year if you had to cancel?
Our event is not a fundraiser, so, you know, but did we make money? Hell no.
Our event is our largest annual fundraiser for the museum. So we made a very modest amount of money from those $25 booth upgrades, sponsorship, and you know, that was really it.
And our in-person event is the major fundraiser for annually for Salem Art Association. And so we did return all booth fees, all that kind of thing happened to us. And we did not charge the artists for the virtual event. So we made no money off of this event. But to be honest with you, that wasn't our intention.
Is anybody thinking about putting a fundraiser component in a future virtual event? Galas, auctions, I mean, a fundraising component for the event?
I wouldn't say that we would rule it out. You know, we haven't figured out how to do it well yet. You know, just calling it a virtual, I mean, I'm invited to a virtual museum gala, and really it was just an excuse to send them $250. So, you know, but we'd like to, you know, sure, we'd like to have a fundraiser, but we don't know what.
Because I think that world is also developing some really great ways to do that. Some of the first stuff that came out was, like you said, is the reason to send them the money. And did you really get anything other than being good to that organization? But there's some really, really cool stuff coming out in that world too, whether it's inside the virtual festival or whether it's a, you know, ancillary event, that it's your gala fundraiser, but it's not on the same site.
So I would just add in that we're a nonprofit art museum and we charge no admission.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's important to have fundraising events. So, you know, many of the events that we host or will be considering down the line would have some sort of fundraising component attached to it.
And for us, Sharon, it's the same thing. Basically, we haven't had the time yet to sit down and talk about how we're going to use it, but we do see that this is going to translate down the road for a lot of different purposes.
Yeah. We so feel for all of you who are in this mess of recovery.
Okay, so kind of moving away from successes, what were your greatest learnings, or what did not work well, or you would change in the future?
One thing that didn't work well was that we asked each participating artist to send us a square photo of themselves that was 1920 pixels by 1920 pixels. We figured that's the size that they're accustomed to. And I would say that 85% of them couldn't do it correctly on the first try. And even the ones that could do it correctly, many of them didn't follow instructions and the photos were out of focus. It was them at the Thanksgiving dinner table, or, you know, here's my high school graduation picture. I mean, it was appalling. So that was an unexpected challenge. Who can't take a selfie? Apparently, you know, 85% of the 157 artists in our show. And we did some virtual demonstrations and that kind of thing, and there's a lot of room for improvement there. We should have made sure each one had a dry run ahead of time, to make sure that they have the bandwidth and so on to make it work.
For sure.
So some of the big takeaways or things that I wish had been different, and I will underline this 3 times. If you are going to be trying to drive traffic using a URL to your website, and it's a long URL, do not try to use an alias for that URL. Hopefully this is not too much jargon, but if you try to use a URL on Facebook within the event or in some of your media partners' websites, it will tack on extra characters to your alias, making that link unusable. So people will see the link and try to click on it, and it will go to an error page instead of the page you want it to go to. So you really have to be careful about not using aliases for the primary website you want people to go to shop. We learned that the hard way. we really had to work around that. And then the other challenge was some people just did not understand the process. They were, I think some patrons were so used to walking around a physical place, talking with artists, looking at all the artwork and buying artwork in a certain way. They just couldn't wrap their brains around how to do it, how to shop online. So we literally had to create a step-by-step. Do this, go here, contact the artist this way, so, and people appreciated us sharing that post. But I guess what I would say is, don't assume people know how to really navigate the internet as well as you think. And, some things that may seem very obvious to us may not seem obvious to the person that wants to be supportive of artists or wants to shop. So just, try to keep those instructions of how to buy as clear and simple as possible so they can just get out there and connect with the artist and buy the artwork. And yeah, I guess if we would have had more time, we would have, engaged artists to create videos and have more interactive content if we could have. So those were some of my key takeaways.
Okay, and for us, like with Rick and his photographs, we had the same problem with our videos because we did ask the artists to produce a short little 1 to 2 minute videos that we actually added to their pages. And they were a huge hit with visitors because it allowed a little taste of that interactive that's missing with so much of the virtual. But about half of the artists who were interested in applying had no desire to do a video. And so even though it was, again, because everything was so quick, we were actually making decisions and implementing them immediately. And we're very open. One of my biggest instructions to the rest of the team was be nimble. Change your mind if it needs to be changed. Just do it. Just do it right away. And so with the videos, we decided immediately, because we were seeing so much reticence on the part of the artists, to drop that requirement and make it just voluntary. And we ended up with about half of the artists with videos and the other half without. And like I said, that became one of the most important things for the visitors. They really enjoyed the videos. We also developed an artist demonstration area with videos as well that was very well received. So what we would do differently, there's so many different things. And we knew this as we were moving through it, what was working and what wasn't. But one of the things, the big things for us, was that our startup time in the beginning was complicated because everything was being done requesting from the artists their materials by email, that kind of thing. So a big component, which would help a lot, would be a fill-in application form And so that is something that we would implement next time around, should we have to do it again. We relied, by the way, we relied very heavily on ZAPP. We used the application forms that the artists had submitted as a way of double checking the materials that we were getting. And we used the images from ZAPP, just took them straight off of the ZAPP site. Another thing that we would change is we allowed one artist to experiment with Zoom. And several other artists on their own were also experimenting, and that was fine by us. But I do think that that is a component that we would consider going forward, because it, again, allows a little bit of that interaction that is missing from not having the in-person fairs. Let's see what else. Oh yes, one big mistake we made. We were limiting the virtual art fair to the same weekend that we have the in-person art fair. And again, there's no reason not to go longer. And so in the middle, it was a Saturday, Sunday, on Saturday night, we decided that we would extend it for an extra week, which we did. And yes, there were some sales that happened, but because we had marketed it as a 2-day only affair, the traffic dropped considerably on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then picked up again, strangely enough, the following weekend. So again, that would be something that we would definitely do. We would not limit it to a weekend only and move it into at least a week long.
Eileen, I have a follow-up question for you. Do you think that the artists' reticence to making videos was more about their comfort with technology, or was it just about not wanting to have a video of them?
No, absolutely. It was comfort level, Christina. It was absolutely amazing. The range of people's comfort, of the artist's comfort level, but not like Annika was saying, not only the artists, but visitors coming to the site. Our site was very clean, very easy to navigate. And I would say probably 95% of people said that that was the case. But, you know, we have a whole range of that too. Look at me. I couldn't unmute my microphone. So, and I've been doing this now for, you know, what, 3 months. So anyway, as far as the artists, yes, they were not comfortable with doing a video. But again, from feedback from the survey, we found that they were very willing to learn. And I think that that's something that's extremely important, that we just have to continually encourage them, because this is the reality for the next couple of years at least. And it's not going to hurt them to accept that and move forward with it.
Thank you.
So again, we had the opportunity to watch all this happen, right? So we went to everybody's virtual fairs as attendees, so we could see what was going on. So our view would be different. And one of our observations is what's the shopping experience, how easy it is to shop, and the not having to go out to artist websites. So we're like I said, fairly opinionated about that. And the comment about Zoom, so if I go back to the events in the platform, Zoom is already built into it in every artist shop. They have to open a Zoom account, but so they have a link, but it's already a feature. So every artist store or booth, or whatever we end up calling them, will have a button in it to talk with the artist, either live right that minute, as if you were at a physical show, in which case they would join whoever else is in that Zoom call, just like they would in a regular show. There's more people in the tent than just them, at least historically. Or they can make an appointment and talk with the artist, and the artist can set their studio hours, right? So they're not getting phone calls in the middle of the night or Sunday or whatever whatever they want. And on the video deal, we've been running training now for a while for artists. We run a pretty big series on video. They certainly need help to do that well. Some of our training included a session that was called Play to the Camera, done by a professional actor and trainer on that, professional editors. And we are now doing the training, and we are now working on a package for artists that we can either send the filming person and the editor, or they can send their video in and our editors will edit them. It won't be free, but no such services are free, right? So, and the money is for the people doing the work, not us. So video is really, I think, a massive thing that we need to help the artists do well, not just for their sales, but we want good content. Because people want that. So we want good content. So if we're going to get good content, we're going to have to go out and help them get it done.
May I add to that? Mm-hmm. Sharon, that absolutely is a great idea about helping the artists by showing them how to do it. And I did find that a lot of the artists were saying that they went to other sites, the other artist sites, and looked at their videos. And then they realized what they needed to do. Mm-hmm. You know, we're all learners on this. And I think that was an extremely important thing for the artists to be able to see 100 other artists and how they handled that. We also did have an editor who we had all the artists' videos and edited as many as we could. There were some that were so bad we couldn't include them, right. Unfortunately.
And some are sideways.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the last 8 minutes, I think we can move into kind of like a free form Q&A. I know we have some questions lined up in the chat already. So Christina, if you want to read those off.
Yeah, so one of the questions is about the ability to support your community or economic impact, basically. So are you able to support the economic impact on your community with the virtual festival, considering that a lot of festivals typically bring local businesses some of their busiest days? So were you able to, and what solutions did you try, if any?
I write a grant to our Visitors Bureau, and it's based on, they want to know about heads in beds. And this year, the due date was actually after we had canceled our event. And so I had to put down that we would be responsible for 0 hotel room nights. And, Penn State is the, it's the big game in town, and State College. And 20-somethings are a problem being COVID responsible. And so our economic impact was 0 because we actually actively told people not to come. And nevertheless, 20-somethings came anyway and were unresponsible. And afterwards, we did have a COVID spike.
So we're starting, as we start working on ours for next year, like I said, heaven forbid that we have to cancel, but we're going to build into the virtual at least some relationships with our downtown restaurants and downtown merchants and promotions with them so that there's some benefit there. It certainly will not measure up to our impact in heads and beds if we are there in person. And we too get pretty significant grant money from our Visitor and Convention Bureau.
Sorry, I was having trouble with my microphone there. Yeah, we were not able to have the normal type of impact that we can have on our local community, with the exception of giving local artists an opportunity to still sell their work. Mm-hmm. So I would say that was, maybe the only point of impact we had.
Yes, and our purpose was to provide a platform for the artists to sell, plain and simple. And, we had a modest impact on that. But as far as the community itself, no, there was no impact whatsoever, I would think, from the virtual. But you know that the in-person fair is extremely well attended, and it has a huge impact. So it was a hit for the community as well.
Thank you all. We got another question that is about how much a sponsor pays to be part of a virtual event. So I know that some of you said, you know, you did have some of the same sponsors, but if anyone wants to speak to that.
I can just share that we had a range of event sponsors. In terms of monetary support, we saw anything from a $500 level to $5,000. We didn't have a lot of sponsors for the virtual event, but that was the range, 500 to 5,000.
And that's about right for us too. Not far off.
So
I'd like to know.
We're rebuilding our, well, have rebuilt our sponsor agreements going forward, and those proposals and contracts include all the virtual aspects that they're going to get along with their on-sites. And like our artists, it's a package deal.
And again, because we had such a short little time around, it's just kind of a moot point for us as far as sponsors. The ones who transferred their money from the in-person fair to the regular fair would be a few $1,000s each.
Rick, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to know from my colleagues if what they did about the other parts of their festivals, like do you have music and food and that kind of thing, and what did you do with that?
Annik, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. I can talk about that just a bit. So unfortunately with our food vendors, there wasn't much of an opportunity that we could offer, but we had already started the process of accepting applications from entertainers. So we did invite those who were interested to submit videos, which we posted on our website and in the feeds. So that was a nice component to the event. But a lot of the normal activities we weren't able to do. We did still have a what we call kids area. So we partnered with a local art supply company, and both our staff and the art supply company came up with projects that kids could do at home. And we had, you know, coloring pages and supplies they could pick up as a package at this store if they wanted to, or order online. So we tried to add some fun into the experience.
We actually did have a stage, and we had a kids' court. But again, the difficulty with the music that we were hoping to get, we asked the musicians to record everything, because we initially were hoping to do a live stream, but quickly let that go because it was absolutely overwhelming what you have to do for that. And so we then asked for the bands to give us recordings. And for them, the short turnaround was absolutely impossible to make that work. So we relied heavily on a local TV station that is community oriented, and they had videos of a whole lot of the bands. And so we chose a few of those, and we also invited two fairly well-known bands in our area to submit some of their pre-recorded music. And we put that all together in a kind of a catalog format underneath what we call the community stage. Same with the Children's Kids Court. We have an education component to Salem Art Association. And so they put together videos, the same as what Annik was saying, just basically things that parents could do at home with their children. And they were very simple little lessons all the way to slightly more complicated teaching lessons. So those were offered. We had big plans to do kind of pop-ups on site on the map that would allow kids to access different things and actually color on the computer. And we had to let that go as well.
There's one other question that I wanted to address. This is specifically for you, Sharon, but how much product can an artist put on the Eventany site that you're putting together?
Unlimited.
Okay.
They can put both in images and artwork and in video. They can have an unlimited number.
Great. Thank you. Well, we are just out of time. It looks like that is also all the questions we've gotten. So like I said, we have recorded this. We're happy to share this link. I hope you all found it valuable, but if you have any comments or suggestions for future discussion ideas or things that you'd like to see come out of these discussions, please let us know. We're happy to hear your feedback.